thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome along to the meeting. We've got a few things to get through today. Just firstly, is there any apologies to begin with, Luciana?
Yes, I have apologies from Julia Mead.
Julia Mead, that's right. Yeah, thank you. Just looking at the minutes from the last meeting, if I just go by the pack numbers, so if there's anything factually incorrect, please let us know. So on page 8 to begin with, page 9, page 10, page 11, okay, page 12, page 13, page 14. No. The actions following the meeting was around the energy team to just consider the timing of their bills for the schools. NGOF is going to work with Ian Morgan on relation to procurement opportunities. Ian, have you, Ian Morgan, have you had a chance to meet with Ian Goff at this stage? I don't know if Ian's actually on the meeting today.
Hi,
Yes.
right.
Yes.
No, I haven't. I've looked at what the Woking rate is, and I'm actually getting a better rate at the moment. So I've shelved that for the time being.
Time being, lovely, thank you. That's good news for you. And then obviously we'll be updated regularly around the risks to do with safety eval, which we'll come to at some point today. Is there any declarations of interest before we move forward? No, thank you. Right, so first up is the revenue monitoring report from March. So Emma, I'm picking this is with you.
So
Actually,
Al's going to
Brian,
run through it today.
that's with me.
Yeah.
That's with me today.
Nice with you.
But,
oh, great.
but
Thank
Al,
you.
before we start, shall we introduce our new schools finance manager?
Yeah, indeed. I'll
Please do.
introduce myself as well, because I'm not sure if I've met everyone. Morning all, I'm Al Moore, the newish finance business partner in Children's Services. And yeah, we also have with us Angela Blogg, who is the new schools finance manager, replacing Catherine. She joined recently. So welcome to her. And just while she gets up to speed, I'll be going through some of those reports.
I
So-
just want to say hello to everybody.
Morning, Angela.
Morning.
So if I just share my screen with the revenue budget report, good news is that there hasn't been a huge amount of movement in the period from November, December. We have had a slight variance in the schools block. There's been a revision in the spend in the growth fund, which we carried forward to next year to prop up the budget of around about 1.4 million in that area. In total, we're forecasting a similar amount, a £12.1 million deficit. Cumulatively, that equates to about 19.6 million. And this does take into account all the DFE safety valve funding, which we gladly had the last instalment of the year hit the bank account early in the month. So good news there. I think, as we're all aware, the deficit is driven by the high needs block. And whilst we've seen some progress in relation to the growth rate slowing in the number of EHT plans, the cost base is still in excess of what we hoped for and, what we originally planned. And, the main contributors are, the cost base in INMIS and mainstream, putting pressure on that area. So overall, a challenging year. And whilst we're broadly in line with November, December, there is a risk where we are hoping to get some funding from health. And, the council is well aware of this. It's from the very top. Negotiations are ongoing. But just want to make you aware that does pose a risk to the numbers that we currently have. That's about it.
Any questions
on that
for
one.
Al at all? Great, thank you, Al. Has anyone got any questions for Al? See any hands now there? Just one question. With regards to health, I'm not too sure if Jonathan will be covering this in his presentation, because we did speak about this the other day with the risk around health. What are you able to give us any indication of whether they we're going to get the support from health funding wise this year, or is it more likely next academic year? And what are the chances of that actually coming through?
I mean, from my perspective, we've got Susan Parsonage involved, Matt Pope, discussions, formal correspondence is ongoing. That's all I know to the best of my knowledge. Others may have more in-depth knowledge on that area.
Ming, can you add some light to us as well?
Yeah, very much what Al just said. We are discussing with Health ICB. That's what they call now integrated care board. Internal funding arrangement is not just working on it across the Berkshire, West Berkshire, how health funding will contribute to our high need SEND spending in particular, and in the high need placement, etc. Let me discuss at the highest chief executive level. Also, 3 DCS, Director for Children's Services, they have the working group that's West Berkshire and working and writing, work together with Health ICB. That's progressing. We haven't got the funding what we wanted yet, but it's a work in progress. We will report back of any progress we may have achieved. Emma may want to add anything more.
Emma, would you like to add to it?
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me. I've got a very poor connection, so
Yes.
apologies if not. I reiterate what Ming has said, and I think we just have to be pragmatic that it's looking less likely that we will get that funding into this year. All the stops are being pulled out to try and achieve that. But I think we just need to sort of be realistic that might not happen in this year, but it won't mean we won't stop trying to fix that problem.
Yep. So I've got 2 questions to this one. One, what are the likelihood of it coming through next academic year or financial year? And also, what sort of amounts are we talking about? Do we know?
So, I mean, I would hope that we would get there next year. We have some new initiatives coming online next year in the hope that that will further improve the position. It's not a small sum of money. I can't remember. Is it about 900,000? I think.
Yeah,
we have in
0.8 million. Yeah.
Okay, so that's quite
not
significant
small
amount
numbers.
of money, isn't it?
It's
Yes.
significant. So so we need to we need to continue to pursue that, and we are working hard at all levels of the council. New initiatives are coming online almost every day in sort of trying to achieve this, and also looking at how we fix our processes from the beginning, that we are locking in that funding from the get-go going forward, so we shouldn't then have a gap going forward, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Can we have an update at the next meeting about how the progress is going on that front? Great,
Yeah,
thank you.
very happy to do that.
Yes, thanks, Emma. Okay, if there's no other questions, can't see any hands up coming through. High needs block. I think we're on to next. So I think will be Jonathan, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's me, Brian. I've got a presentation to do.
Thank you.
Apologies it didn't go in
Yes.
advance. I'll screen share now and just get it. So, I'm updating on a number of issues today. I'm going to focus initially on some financial analysis and benchmarking. We've done that particularly in response to what Al just mentioned, which was that whilst the demand is levelling out, spend is not yet following suit. So we wanted to have a bit more of a zoom in on why that was and what was driving that. We'll also touch base briefly on our accelerated progress plan and bring everyone up to speed with the SEND strategy refresh too. I see Lucienne's got her hand up.
I'm sorry, it took me a while to just get my microphone to unmute. The next item on the agenda was actually the final Highness block budget, for which we did receive a report, not the update from Jonathan, but we can swap it around just to let you know.
Yep.
That we
Great,
skipped
thank you.
an item, yeah?
Thanks, Lucian. Shall I
Thank
proceed?
you. Thank you, sir.
Shall I proceed, Chair, or should we?
Yes, carry on. Yeah.
Okay, I'll carry on.
Yeah, no, keep going. Yep.
Sorry, lost my bearings now. So obviously, broadly, our aspiration through these discussions is to work in partnership with schools to address, to agree our high need spending plans. As I said, demand for EHC plans is on course with projections. That has levelled out as kind of broadly where we'd hoped it would be by this stage, but the money is not following suit. Now, you'd expect there'd be a long tail that would take a bit of time to come with us, but we're still a bit concerned that it's taking longer than we hoped it would. Particularly that pressure, as Al said, is arising from sustained placement in independent non-maintained sector provision, which, as everyone knows, is extraordinarily expensive. But also, and what was interesting, is increased placement costs in mainstream and alternative provision. Now, probably no surprises there, but again, we wanted to have a deeper look into that. So we carried out some more analysis. Just to give some context, the current financial banding system we have in place was brought into place in 2015 in response to the SEND reforms when they originally happened, but most areas have kept abreast of that and made changes since, because obviously the system has been undergoing a huge period of change. Our system remains an hours-based allocation, so the way we frame needs in our EHC plans, the way we frame the funding that goes out to schools is very much based on a particular portion of hours. Most areas have really begun to move away from that. Because it very much denotes, and from a parent's perspective, it means they expect to see a body, a person attached to their child with an EHC plan. And of course, we know, A, that's not particularly good in terms of outcomes for young people in terms of their independence, but B, it also limits schools' flexibility in terms of how to deploy that resource. And often having it purely in the shape of TA time isn't always helpful in that, particularly when you have larger scale, larger volumes of EHC plans in particular schools. So most areas have begun to move away from that, and we certainly think that's likely to be an outcome of this review. Over time, from those banding, that we had broadly 3 bands agreed back in 2015, but over time arrangements have been negotiated around particular individual cases, and in fact those individual negotiations have become the norm. So much so we now have around 50 different levels of banding. There is no consistency there at all. That also means you can often have the same child with a similar level of needs in different schools who may be receiving different levels of funding. There's real inconsistency and inequality baked into that, and we think that's not really helpful to the system as a whole. We also, the arrangements with our resource bases, we've had to come up with something fairly ad hoc, because that's obviously we had to proceed with that. And our special schools, again, there's a level of inconsistency there. So across the board, it's evolved over time, but it's kind of moved away from its moorings, if you like, and it's become a very ad hoc and inconsistent model. Also worth highlighting, if you think of the sort of funding as a kind of ladder, we're missing the bottom step or two. Our base funding for an EHC plan is around £4,000 mark. Most areas have a starting point rather below that. So it means we're kind of jumping that first step in funding up to a slightly higher level. This analysis, a lot of this comes from the local authority high needs benchmarking tool. We know we have fewer EHC plans per head of population, so we're relatively low in terms of issuing plans. But what's interesting is that our spend per head of population, not per plan, but per head of population, is higher. So whilst we give out less plans, we spend more money doing that. We also have a relatively low proportion of pupils at SEND support level, and what we do have is very inconsistent between schools in terms of what they consider to be someone on the SEND register. Also, not even at individual school level, but system-wide, we know our spending on SEND support and inclusion is very low. We're in the bottom quartile, lowest part of the bottom quartile. And that has been, this is historical benchmarking, and we have addressed that to some extent with some of the investment we've been making in the last year or 18 months. But even with that investment in place, I think we'll still remain a relatively low investor in that early stage. And what that paints is a picture of a system that intervenes late, and that costs us more money. And we need to, I think the whole system needs to move its focus to intervening earlier and more effectively. We have a very uneven distribution of EHC plans between schools. So we have a smaller number of schools with a very, very high number of plans in them, high proportion of plans in them, and some not carrying nearly that much, not nearly as many in terms of percentage or in terms of that sort of shared shared reliance. And that means that we have a number of schools that are undoubtedly very, very inclusive, but that does create system-wide vulnerabilities. And it also means there's totally different economies of scale of operation in some schools compared to others. And it makes it's a system that's somewhat out of balance, I'd say. The agreements, as I said, are very ad hoc. Some schools seem to be better at negotiating than others. Some schools get very good deals for their EHC plans, others less so. So it's not consistent, and it's very much down to individual personalities and individual negotiating skills, not about the needs of the children necessarily. Now, what we do have, and what we absolutely welcome, and we absolutely all have to celebrate, is we have a very high proportion of our EHC plans in mainstream. No question, mainstream schools are carrying a greater range of needs than has been the case historically and previously, which we really need to embrace and support and welcome. So we do need to proceed with caution, because we don't want to reverse that position. We don't want to make it untenable. We have to make sure it's transparent, sustainable, and has a long-term prospect of keeping us in that position. So what are we doing about all that? And that's the analysis. Some of that isn't surprising, but the detailed analysis has rather confirmed what we already had some sense of. A recommendation from other high-performing areas that are doing better at balancing their high needs block. One of their major headlines was create a simple banding framework, something that everyone understands, everyone can buy into, and everyone supports. We are moving at pace on that. I know we've been talking about this for some time, but it's now picking up pace. We've established a team to lead this process. We've got some schools who've already signed up for it, but I should say at this stage, we don't have I think we did have a volunteer yesterday, but we don't at the moment have a high school involved. I think that's probably in hand now, but certainly if Schools Forum if anyone wanted to be involved, we'd welcome certainly high school involvement. We have started some of this work with Oak Tree Special School. We clearly had to get something in place for them. Just the process of establishing their banding framework, although it's been an individual arrangement, it's helped develop some of those principles behind it and helped illustrate some of the issues, and sort of given us some sort of foundations to build on. I mean, zooming out from just the top-up funding, this is a part of a bigger picture around consistency across the system. This has to be done in tandem with a number of other issues. I know we've talked about this here before, but it only emphasises the case. We have to have greater consistency. That's everything through from SEND support level through to what we would consider ordinarily available. And we're doing a lot of work. We're embarking on a piece of work to establish and review our ordinarily available provision across the area. That will include health in that conversation to make sure that health is in the mix for that ordinarily available offer, and that we make sure that's as well focused as it needs to be. Also looking at moderation between schools. Our area Senko again will be doing peer moderation, so schools coding of children becomes a bit more consistent and everyone's clear what the kind of guidance on that is. Yeah, I've said those things. I think I'll move on. So, I mean, risk. There are undoubtedly, this is a major change program. There are some risks and complexities associated with this process, but we need to balance that risk against the fact we need to go at speed. I think everyone would acknowledge this is not. I know many schools have said this needs to shift, this needs to change. So we do have to go at pace, but we should pay attention to certain risks. This will fundamentally change how we appraise needs in school and appraise the costs associated with those needs. There's clearly no new money in the system, and there will undoubtedly be some winners and losers. Overall, we believe, and we can absolutely argue the case, this will achieve more equity and fairness across the system. But undoubtedly, some schools will win, some will lose, and we need to move at pace whilst also taking into account we're not doing anything too dramatic or too fast or destabilise some of the schools. So you have to balance. There's a constant balancing act here between speed and pace and impact on schools, and we need to do that in conjunction with you and make sure you're comfortable with what we're doing. So we have to model a number of options. We have very good practice from other areas. We know what good looks like, so we can model that and we can implement that and test it and model it as to what the impact would be locally. But with all the other changes happening in the system, that's a complex and delicate process. It shouldn't be underestimated. It has to be done in partnership. This has to be something you as a Schools Forum and schools across the board understand the need for and are in support of. We can't emphasise that enough. We cannot do this to you. We've got to do this together. And I think in terms of how we implement it, it's likely to have to be a phased implementation because of the dramatic shift it will result in. So we might do that through annual reviews, happening at annual review requests, or obviously with new EHC plans coming into the system. That will all be determined through this process we're entering into now. Just to say, I mean, this is a slightly side point, but it's relevant. We're increasingly aware, we are developing, as you know, we're developing lots of new provision, we are besieged with requests from neighbouring authorities who want to use that provision. So even as we develop that new provision, we have to have a greater sense of which of our children are going to end up in our special school places as they develop. If we don't get that pipeline really thorough and really well worked out, then we will have neighbouring authorities easily swallowing up a significant portion of our places. So that links to this piece of work in terms of absolute consistency as to which schools rightly are in mainstream, which pupils rather are rightly in mainstream, and which of those really need to be in our new special schools as they develop. In terms of timetable, we want to have this agreed to. We would hope to have a model worked through in terms of modelling and agreed to by September. That is ambitious, but I think we know we want to go at that pace, and we think we can do that. We've got one of our interims, Colin McKenzie, has done this kind of work elsewhere, and Colin's going to be leading this piece of work. It's one of his major pieces of work over the coming months. That sets out all the stages in the process. I won't labour the point that we'll share this and people can see. But we can't go at that pace without you on side, basically. We can begin implementation in September, but I suspect that's ambitious, and it won't be a big bang approach. It'll be an incremental implementation. Right. So that's the main meat of my presentation, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions about that. But these other parts are quicker, but I'll go through them. We are still under the kind of shadow of our SEND inspection. Obviously, we've finished the written statement of action, but we're still in what's called an accelerated progress plan. That was the last bit of the previous poor inspection that almost hangs over us. It's largely focused on preparation for adulthood. We've signed off 3 of the 5 areas for improvement under that arena, but there are still 2 remaining. There's a meeting tomorrow with CQC and Ofsted. We are expecting and hoping to have that ceased at that point, but there still remains a slight risk. Those are the 2 areas. I won't dwell on it now. They're both very largely health related, so I won't. That's why I'm not dwelling on detail here. But just so you know, this is a process. Once this is done, touch wood, all being well, tomorrow that will get signed off and we'll be out from under the last remnants of the previous SEND inspection. Touching base on the SEND strategy refresh, I know I've brought that here previously. That's just reiterating the principles and priorities. We agreed, particularly with health partners, at the very tail end of last year, to hold a series of co-production workshops this year, the first quarter of this year. We've held 2 of those. I know schools, thank you very much, have been involved in those sessions. They've been useful. In some ways, they haven't changed the fundamentals of what the strategy is saying. What we are getting into that is useful is more detail around action planning as to how we're going to deliver meet some of those priorities, and particularly doing that in partnership with health. So I hope this extension of time has been valuable, has been worthwhile. We've got a 3rd workshop at the end of this month, and then we'll be writing up the outcome of that into the SEND strategy. That's on course for approval. Because of HERDA, that will probably be June before it gets signed off at executive. But in some ways, the sign-off process is not preventing us from making progress on all that activity. But just so you can see there, the strategy is on its way. Happy to share the draft as it stands. I think that's gone out previously, but it will change again in the next month or 2. So probably worth holding back and waiting to see the new version. I think that's the presentation. So I'm happy to take any. I'm sure there will be questions. Happy to take any questions. Or comments or feedback.
Jonathan? Yeah, any comments or feedback for anyone? Phil.
Hi, just a quick question. Thinking about the potential move from hours-led to needs-led focus,
yes.
Has there been any discussion about what that will look like for current EHCPs and whether they'll be reviewed as part of the whole process or whether it'll just be for new ones moving forward?
Phil, you'd be delighted to know that question. That same issue was raised yesterday by a head teacher. I think that is one of the things we'll have to model. We fully appreciate this is bound up in the shape of staff in schools right now. So to make any dramatic changes to that would be disruptive and not welcome. Having said that, I think we'll have to model how that might be done and the pace that might be done at. But we wouldn't want to. We're not going to do anything. We're not going to pull the rug out from under the feet from schools because it wouldn't be helpful to anyone. I hope as long as the principals agreed, we will hopefully agree in partnership what the right time frame and how we implement that over time.
Yeah, and I can't speak for all schools, but I think schools recognise that the high needs block spending can't continue in this current state that it's in, and whilst schools also appreciate that there's going to be a real challenge to potential changes to funding that might be affected, you know, if current EHCPs were done. I think there is an appetite and desire from schools to have those conversations, work together to come up with a solution that is fair and, you know, and at the right pace, because otherwise, you know, if we leave it too long, we're still going to have the same problems and just be hemorrhaging more money. So I think, you know, I can't, as I said, I can't speak for everyone, but I think schools would be open to being part of those discussions. But thank you for clarifying that.
As I said, we all need the pace, but we also need to respect that too much disruption will be very counterproductive. I mean, hopefully, I know it will come with challenges, but that move towards needs-led, it'll give you a lot more flexibility. And, you know, at the moment, parents are able to point at the number of hours in the EHC plan and demand time that is not necessarily always in the benefit of their child. And so having that slightly more fluid way of allocating resources, well, we believe is better for children. But obviously, carrying parents with us on that journey may be a bumpy ride.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks, Phil. Amanda.
Hi, Jonathan. Thank you for that. I thought that that was a very concise appraisal of the issues, actually. So thank you for that. As a school, I'm the head teacher of the Bullmarsh School, and we have a very high number of EHCPs. And I was just wondering if is it too late for us to be able to join in with the group to do with the discussions over this or the work on this, or is that kind of gone? Is that too late, or is it not open to?
No, I think we're still open, absolutely open. I mean, in some ways, I haven't got a process to determine. You know, if we have a queue of schools all wanting to be involved, we'll need a way of determining who's best placed. But certainly, I can put your name down and pass that on to Colin and think about. I mean, think with you mutually. How do we decide who's best placed to do that? We want a good mix, obviously, a good mix of having schools at all different sort of stages will be helpful because it kind of helps model what the implications are. So yeah, very welcome.
Okay, so that kind of information will come out, will it?
Yeah. Well, I'll note your interest and then we'll come back to you.
Okay, brilliant. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Meng.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, just would like to illustrate what Jonathan just said in answering Amanda's questions. It's absolutely key that we co-produce with school leader on this. Jonathan already reached out to some primary school association. Already associate this with socialize this with the secondary school chair, and then we're going to talk to them. Also, individual school. Particular school, like Amanda just said, probably with a higher number EHCP children's. What Jonathan presentation described as the dominant field school with a huge proportion, 40%. I think our EHCP kids in 2 or 3 in 3 schools. We will reach out to make sure we co-design this. So that's why Jonathan said that we need to take this forward with caution, carefully. At the same time, we also reach out to other local area, which on the surface, they seem to have a more healthier high need balance. When I say more healthier, basically they don't have high need deficit. We want to find out why. Jonathan already captured one of the key message. 2 or 3 local area we reach out. They said, keep your banding simple. Like all 3 of them said that when we presented what our banding are, a current situation. So again, it's in working on contact we want to put back to school leader. So I just want to stress that co-producing this with the school leader is absolutely the key, and we want to reach out to you. Yeah.
No, thank you, man. Sarah, sorry.
Yes, I just wanted to say 2 things. Firstly, thanks, Jonathan. I think that was a very succinct presentation and outlined all the issues. Firstly, to say that Addington does have a needs-led funding band that is extremely simple and it does work effectively. That's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing is about the comment about other local authorities taking up special school places in Wokingham. And I just wanted to comment on this because at the moment we're receiving up to 25 consultations a week. We had over 350 consultations last year just for Addington. These are then resulting in tribunals. And at the moment, schools get absolutely no support in trying to fight those tribunals. Secondly, we're often then directed to take a child, and it's often one from another local authority. And thirdly, the solicitors that Woking are procuring work for many local authorities and are not, I feel, giving us advice for Wokingham. So I just wanted to raise that because I think it's absolutely key that our places that we are building in the future. If we get half of other local authorities in those places and half of Wokingham, the safety valve programme won't work. And so I think we do need to put some time and effort into looking at the legal services that we're procuring and the support that we're giving schools to actually fight tribunals, because we are being directed to take other authorities' children.
No, they're very good points, Sarah. I think we'd all agree with you on those points that you've made, and it's crucial that it is for Wokingham children. When we come back to you in a minute, I think Kerry had a hand up first, and then we'll come to you, Meg.
Yeah, obviously it doesn't link to what Sarah's just said, and as early years it always just veers just slightly off the conversation, but while we're thinking about spending money to save money and saving money to looking forward, early years have got very good at doing this early intervention, and I think that they've got very good at putting in place the everyday and that targeted approach before we step it up. I wonder whether there needs to be a piece of work with families, and during the HCP process, I don't think families understand that there are changes and there are things happening. So, for example, they expect the HCP to mean they get one-to-one. And it doesn't matter how many times you say that this isn't necessary. As a practitioner, I think they need to hear that from their caseworkers. And I think it needs, maybe the information online about EHCPs for Wokingham needs to be very clear. I would like to say that the HCP process in Wokingham is far easier than Reading and West Berkshire. I've done all sorts in my time, and it is a really easy process for parents to understand. I worry that at the end of the process, when they don't get what they want / what the child needs in that moment, that they're then going to go to mediation, and they're then going to go to appeal, and we're in the same situation with the tribunals, etc. Whether or not I believe that the child's need and the parents' want is right or wrong, I can only give them so much guidance. And I think that the information that they get from their caseworker very much depends on who the caseworker is, how experienced they are, how much time they have. And I don't want to say it, but I also think possibly who the family is, how easy they are to talk to. And I think that's something that we could probably try to fix somehow to help for the long term.
Can I respond? Is it if I jump? I know I haven't got my hand up.
Yes,
right?
please do. Please,
I mean, what I'd say, Kate,
please do, Jonathan.
As you're aware, and I'm sure many schools are aware, we've had quite a turbulent turnover of staffing within the SEND team. We have made some really excellent appointments recently, and we think we are creating far more consistent. I mean, you're right. I'm talking about consistency. You have to start close to home. We are ensuring that consistency of approach, and there's clear guidance for the team, that the team are all abiding by the same ground rules, because I think that hasn't always been as well enforced in the past as it needs to be. But we've got a job on our hands, because that also then has to penetrate right out across the whole system in terms of understanding. And they rightly said, a lot of this is about communication. We really relish that, and we really welcome the chance to work with partners like yourselves to help make sure those messages get out into the parent community. Because I think the main message is this is not fun. People will interpret this as being about cost cutting. Actually, it's in the well-being and the best interest of children to have the right support at the right moment. I'm now speaking from my personal family experience. My nephew spent his entire secondary schooling with a TA next to him the whole way through, and it didn't do him any favours at all. It didn't do anything for him. So I believe that that's the right thing to do. But persuading parents of that is going to take some doing, and we all need to work together on getting that right.
And I think that, if at the panel point, that, you know, we're looking at making places available in mainstream for children that possibly a couple of years ago would have been allocated specialist. You know, I think we're all going to hold our hands up, and we're trying to, you know, support our mainstream settings to make sure they can offer that help. But from a parent perspective, they don't see that we're doing that change. So I think that if they are allocated mainstream, even though all the requests are for specialists, i.e. for the parents and the, you know, the professionals, I think there needs to be some way of feeding back to the parent why that is and why it's going to work, because at the moment they're just going appeal, and whether or not I agree with that, them appealing isn't really the point, you know. But I think that if we are going to make those changes, we need to try and help parents have the information to understand why they're being told no, and it isn't for some other really unkind reason from their point of view, including money. Thank you.
Thank you. Ming.
Thank you, Brian. I think in response to Sarah's earlier point about legal support, just to give you a feedback, we are reviewing our commission legal service, joint legal service. But what you just suggest, Sarah, is a good point. We will feed that back into that review, our joint legal service. Internal Carrie's point about consistent information for the year, same at all parent. And one of the work we're doing, apart from what Jonathan said, to make sure we have sustainable same team, consistent quality. We make some good progress. Also, we reviewing our local offer. And when I say local offer website, internal contents, information in the local offer, whether it's consistent or not, easy for parents to understand or not. So we review that. I think, again, we make very good progress. So we're going to have a much better local offer website. Let's local offer website, not everything, but as you said, Carrie, I think for some parent policy through sort of individual contact, through caseworker, also group, parent forum group, we need to get the information, consistent information and message that, yeah, that's what we're working on. Just want to give you that reassurance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ming. Just a couple of things for you, Jonathan. Can this your PowerPoint presentation be shared to all schools? Be helpful. I know next night, Erin and Sarah and Shirley and Andy are here. This would need to be shared, I think, with the Secondary Federation, and then Phil, if this could be shared with WPHA, because I think as a forum now we're in a bit of a privileged position where we hear a lot of this information. But I think if you want that partnership much wider, and it needs to be really shared quite. I don't know whether you can join some of the meetings, Jonathan, to actually go through this. That would be helpful.
I've got a slot on the 20th, I think, primary heads. I think, Phil, I suggested I deliver that present. That's probably more important than the presentation I was going to deliver, so perhaps I should deliver that one.
Yeah, that would be really helpful to hear from you directly, Jonathan. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just for the group to know for that, Secondary Federation invite us to talk about this. Or the next meeting, the 2nd of May, whether too late or not, we go back to Nick to see whether another special section can be arranged. 2nd of May, whether it's too late or not. I think maybe a bit too late. Yeah, just Brian, just what I'm saying. I think we're working on that to socialize this with the school leader.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I think just as Jonathan emphasised, it's a roundabout partnership. We all know that there needs to be change with the phased approach. But I think there is, as I spoke with Jonathan the other day, there's a precedent when we're done with the with the national funding formula, getting closer to that as a task and finish. We worked our way to that. We could do the same on shore, working with Jonathan on SEND and getting the right systems in place for us. Liz, I see you've got your hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it was a really good presentation, and the fare system sounds really good. I noticed you said there was no new funding, and in the paperwork it mentions about keeping the hourly rate the same from the 1st of April 2024 before we go to bandings.
Just realised I'm muted. Sorry. I think because this will have a big impact. I mean, I think part of the thinking around that was this is going to make changes from September. So I think we're trying to sort of hold our horses on that. I think and make sure we make all those implement as many changes as possible in one move rather than in dribs and drabs. I think that's part of the thinking behind that, because this will have a bearing on that clearly.
Yeah, it's just that we've had the staffing that are supporting these needs, their pay has gone up 20% in the last 2 years, their salaries, and we don't know what the April pay rise will be for those staff at the moment, but we're expecting at least 4%, but they're asking for 10%. So we're not getting the funding at all for that staffing. We know that the funding does not cover the HCP at all, but to keep it completely the same, I think will really hit schools hard.
Okay, well, your comments are certainly noted, and we're certainly acutely aware of the pressures on schools. That we'll bear those things in mind. I mean, there's not much more I can say at this stage on that, I'm afraid.
Thank you.
No, that's a good point to make aware of that. Thanks, Liz, and thank you, Jonathan, for the presentation. Right, so we're going back to the high needs. I've got the order. So I'll hand over to Emma. Is going to be leading on this? I'm not too sure.
Me again, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Oh, Al, brilliant, lovely, thank you.
Again, thanks to Jonathan for that presentation. That segues quite nicely into this high needs block budget update for next year. And I don't want to repeat things that he's already alluded to. So let me just share my screen. So yeah, first and foremost, and as I discussed with the Task and Finish group, this has been a really difficult, challenging budget to set. We're in a position where we're setting a budget based on what we must do rather than what we'd like to do, and just focusing on what we must do. The minimum funding guarantee for local special schools has got to be at 0 to 0.5%, and we've got to carry through an additional grant of 3.4% for those special schools, PRUs and hospitals. As Jonathan alluded to, we're keeping the bandings and the hours framework the same in response to the financial pressures, as well as the new framework hopefully being implemented in September. The budget is in line with the most recent DFE submission. There's been a few tweaks with regard to the income. Obviously, there's the 0.5% schools block transfer, which is greatly appreciated, as well as a top slice from the early years to help contribute to that. Yeah, very difficult. And we are including savings for new provisions in local special schools, new resource bases coming on board in Loddon and Radstock, and we're hoping that will offset some of the costs in misplacements and that cost base. And as we've said, growth is slowing, but it's the growth rate is slowing. It's not declining as we'd hope. There are a number of initiatives, Jonathan went into that, and projects ongoing and have been ongoing for some time, which we're really hoping that will take some effect this year and moving forwards. To stem that flow and cost of the HCPs coming on board. In summary, it's a deficit position of 10.2 million, so slightly reduced than this year. And we are fortunate in that, as an authority, we have this equalisation fund where we can dip into to get back to the original safety valve targets and secure the funding, that additional funding from the DFE. So that's it in a nutshell. Those are the key changes or lack of changes really going on next year. Yeah, very, very difficult to set the budget, and we outline that with the Task and Finish group. But we are working hard, as Jonathan outlined, to get these initiatives, these projects in place to try and stem that flow.
Yeah, Sarah, you got a question?
Yes, I just wanted to check, as we're in Wokingham not putting any inflationary uplift onto the top-ups for anybody, that does mean that we then can't charge the other local authorities any inflationary increase. And do we know whether our neighbouring authorities are going to be charging Wokingham inflation uplift on their top-ups, which then means that they're recouping more money. So sometimes, you know, by holding those bandings, it means that other children from other authorities are getting a better deal from Woking. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that I've discussed with Colin. We're trying to understand what the guidance is in relation to, you know, yourself, Addington, being able to increase the top-up rates for out of borough or other authorities. So we're definitely looking at that. But yeah, completely appreciate your position in relation to that.
But it's speaking to West Berkshire and Reading to find out whether they're going to put uplifts on their top-ups, which then you will have to pay without us being able to ask them the same back, because we haven't done it here. So I just wanted to make sure that they were holding theirs as well.
That I do not know off the top of my head. I'd have to do some research and speaking to the peers and other authorities to understand their position. So I'll get onto that.
Because I think it's really vital, because if other authorities are recouping costs through out of borough placements and we're not, then that does put us in a worse position. Notwithstanding all the increases that we've got to face as special schools and and mainstream schools who employ support staff. And I agree with Liz. The actual they're asking for 10% support staff. We've been told to budget for 3 to 4%, but it's likely to come in at 6, 7 or 8%. And so therefore the 3.4% does not go anywhere near, as we know. We've talked about that in the Task and Finish group as to funding that.
Yeah, and I fully appreciate it's a really difficult position and situation for all. So yeah, I will definitely look to speak to peers and understand what's going on in their situation.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Al, could you make that as an action to report back to the Net School Forum about the research you made there and what the state of play will be moving forward?
Yeah,
that's a very fair point Sarah's making. Yeah, and we need that sort of action quite urgently, I feel. Emma, sorry.
No, I just wanted to reiterate what Al said. It is a real balancing act, and we might make improvements in some areas and not in others, and so it's a real balancing act between where we get opportunity and lose that opportunity. So as Al said, it's a really challenging budget, and we've tried to balance it the best that we can, but Al will certainly take away that action to go and sort of pick up with our peers in local authorities to see what they're doing and come back.
Because we also know that the independent maintained special schools are certainly putting on an increase on their top-ups and uplift. And I think the overspend on the budget this year is largely because we predicted that was going to be much lower than it actually is. And so is it realistic to put in I can't remember what it is it 2.5%?
2.5%,
that the independent special schools are going to ask for? Because doing school improvement in those schools, I know they're going to be asking for way more. So really next year you'll be in the same position because you've budgeted for 2.5% and they're going to be asking for 4.5%, 5.5%, and they've got paperwork to say that that's got to be paid. So is it realistic to set that budget?
Well, that's our stance, and the commissioning team are working very hard.
My feed 5 years ago. I just sent it to my babies. I just went, cuties, we've done so well.
Well, I think there's a bit of background.
Sorry, she's muted now.
Yeah, I mean that's the stance on discussions with the commissioning team. We are negotiating very hard to keep that the 2.5%, slightly outside of our control, admittedly. And it is a risk, and has been a risk for some time, but we've just got to do our utmost to ensure that we're keeping those costs down. It's not for all providers, thankfully. They come in dribs and drabs. So overall, we're talking we'd like to keep it at 2.5%. But yeah, I mean it's certainly a challenge, Sarah. Yeah.
Emma.
Last year this financial year we had a similar challenging target, and the commissioning team do a fantastic job. And as Al said, some come in with requests, others don't, and so actually that is our net position. And our approach last year meant that we were able to keep those costs down. So I think I'm not saying it's not challenging, but it is realistic.
All right, thank you both. I can see there's no other hands up. Moving on to early years, and this I think is going to be more about information because some decisions need to be made quite early. So, Ming, are you going to be sharing this information, or is this with someone else?
I think it's me again, I'm afraid.
All right, yes, sorry, Luciana.
I just need to check with Emma, was a vote required on that item?
I believe that was, no, I don't believe a vote's required on the high needs block budget update, no.
It was just an update, okay, that's fine,
Yes,
thank you.
Information, yeah, thank you. Sorry, I'll carry on.
Sorry, yes, bear with me, I'll just share my screen again. So early years, again, I'll just cover the key themes and changes. Let me know if you can't see that table. So key changes for next year is that there'll be new entitlements for 2-year-olds from April next month, and then from 9-month-olds from September. You see there we've increased the rates for 2-year-olds to £8.68 per hour with an extra 50p for disadvantaged. The 3 to 4-year-old base rates increased to £5.73, and then we have this new rate for the under 2-year-olds, 9-month to 2-year-olds at £11.36. Other bits to note is that we have increased the early years inclusion fund by around about 65,000 to 215, and there's been a slight increase to the maintained nursery supplement of around about 10,000. We met with the task and finish group around Christmas time, and it's been agreed that the top slice will be 4.75% of the maximum 5% allowed, and that takes into account the statutory duties that the authority have to undertake, as well as this year taking about 333k to the high needs block to contribute towards the EHCP plans for those early years children. The service cost, that sort of 550 grand mark, has remained largely the same. It's just that contribution to the high needs block that's really changed. So that's it in a bit of a nutshell. Any questions?
No. Do you know whether Ian Morgan? Yes, thank you, Ian. Come there.
Hi, thank you, Brian. I'll just one comment. The compliance formula that you've got listed in table C, each of the funding streams has a top slice. So should we not be reporting the compliance on each top slice?
Really good point, and that's something I raised with Stuart yesterday, actually. Or I was querying why is it only for 3 and 4-year-olds, or 2 and 3? I can't remember which one it was now. So yes, let me go back to Stuart and understand the guidance and whether we need to do that across all age groups. Very confident that it will pass the test, because overall we're okay. But I think for clarity and awareness, we can certainly look at doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm confident. You guys are very transparent and very pragmatic with your formula setting, so I'm sure you are. But I think for completeness, we do need to measure it, and especially as the new funding streams have significantly increased the EY block by 7 million this year, and next year it will increase again when we go to 30 hours for the 2-year-olds and under 2s. I think that we do have to monitor it, because obviously a lot of that, what we're top slicing from those blocks, is giving you the headspace to transfer this money over into the high needs blocks to support the early years EHCs. And one last thing, obviously in the budget, the top slice is due to reduce as well. So
Yes.
there's obviously going to be pressure on that block in terms of how much you can now top slice and how much you're going to be able to make available to, in the future, transfer over to support the early years EHCs in the high needs block.
Yeah, I've been led to believe that's tapering off over the next few years.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ian. Any other comments, Kerry?
Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, you three, for that report. No other questions coming through? No. Okay, so that moves us to the last item, which is the forward planning. Lisa, have you got an idea what we're...
Sorry,
Yes.
Brian. I think we need to vote on that because the early years budget needs to be agreed formally.
Okay.
Lucianne.
Lucianne.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, it takes me a bit of time to...
I just had it on written.
I believe there is a need
to receive and
a
consider.
formal vote. Emma, can you confirm?
I believe there is supposed to be a vote. I thought it was agreed prior, but
Yep.
No,
I think we had the draft
did
in
in
the
this
last
instance,
meeting.
yeah.
We had the draft in the last meeting, and the formal vote was going to take place today.
Yeah, it's gone to cabinet, and the draft amounts have been released to providers, but it does need a formal vote.
Can I add something before we put it onto vote? Yeah, just that like Ian said, there will be some change in the next few years. Also, for this particular internal top slide, particularly, DFE would like the local authority to give like confirmation before this meeting took place. That's national things. So again, that's why, and when Ian said to try to be transparent, we calling Ian, have a early year task force group. Also, we socialize this with Brian as chair. There's no, we have that dilemma that the DFE want us to confirm exactly what the top slide is 5% or not. We are told we need to report on it. Just let you know. We have socialized with the relevant colleague here, and then we did report to the DFE. That's what we proposed to top slide in a particular aspect of early years funding. Just to let you know, try to be more transparent. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ming. But you're right, and we go through and actually formalise it by vote now. So I know the task and finish of the early years group has approved and since the budget coming through. So if we just go through and everyone can say that yes or no, they agree with the budget's been put forward. So my first list is Amanda.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Andy. Andy Hickman? No. Yes, Andy. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, he's a building
Then next on my list is Deborah.
Yeah. Agreed.
Thank you, Deborah. Darren.
Agreed, Brian.
Thank you, Darren. Ian Thomas.
Agreed, Brian.
Ian Morgan.
Agreed, thank you.
Ian Piddock, do you have a vote, Ian? I'm guessing you do.
Yes.
Agreed.
Yes. Thank you, Ian. Jen.
Agreed.
Thank you, Jen. Jonathan, I don't think you get a vote. Kerry.
Agreed, thank you.
Thank you, Kerry. Liz.
Agreed, thanks.
Thank you. Nikki.
Agreed, thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Phil.
Agreed.
Thank you, Phil. Prue, do you have a vote? Yes.
No.
No, I don't
No,
have a
no,
vote.
no. No, sorry. Okay. Sarah.
Agreed.
Thank you. And Shirley.
Agreed.
Agree. Thank you. And I agree as well. So that should be everyone. So it's fully unanimous. Thank you, Luciana. And now just the forward planning program. On the next meeting, Luciana, have you got there what we are currently covering?
Yes, you should have it within the papers. Is the last item.
Yep.
Let's just go down.
Sorry, yes, we do. So we've got the revenue monitoring report, the management plan, safety valve, early years. That's today. I haven't got the next. The 10th of July, sorry, do.
I can share that
so
if need be. That would help.
Yes. Yeah, I've got revenue output, revenue monitoring, management safety valve, budget update, and then we need to look at the consultation arrangements for next year, and also could we add in there just about membership as well, Lisa, because we'll be meeting about that, just to update everyone about the membership coming in for September.
Okay.
That's great. I think that's everything covered for today. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone who presented and gave us information today. That was great. And see everybody soon.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
John,
everyone.
you've got 1 minute.